Think back for a minute from when you were a teenager. Did you ever see one of your classmates come in that was bloodied, bruised, had injuries, band-aids, bandages, anything on their face, anything on their body that they brushed off and couldn't explain from just a regular sports injury? And this is where teen dating and violence comes in. Violence is more than just what people think it is on the surface, from hitting, punching, kicking. It actually involves stalking. Violence can come in the form of sexual abuse. It can come in the form of verbal abuse, psychological abuse. Violence comes in a lot of different forms and comes from a lot of different people. Different styles of the violence, the acts of the violence themselves. You're looking at physical, and this would be your typical stereotypical hitting, kicking, punching, shoving, pinching, anything that would cause a physical mark or bruise or visible evidence on the body. Sexual abuse, of course, comes into the sexual acts, forcing somebody into something that they don't want to do, whether it's to themselves, to another person, to the abuser themselves. Psychological abuse is whenever you're looking at things that you can't see. Stalking is also something that you can't see. The psychological abuse is where people start manipulating people. They degrade them. They make them feel less than what they are. Basically make people feel like they are worthless and not good enough to be loved by anyone else and unable to escape the situation that they're in. Different outlets that you would typically find these violent and abusive acts in a teen relationship. Of course, you're going to be able to hear it. You be able to see it in public. A lot of these acts, such as the psychological ones, the stalking ones, those are done in private that you can't necessarily see out in the open. But now we've also entered into an age of digital era. So a lot of teens have cell phones glued to their hands. They have computers for school, tablets, gaming devices. So a lot of violent and abusive acts in the psychological era. And even branching into some of the stalking and the sexual side of things are on the digital side that most people don't see from the surface unless they were able to access their digital world, so much to speak. Realistically, in a violent and abusive relationship, whether it be a teenage relationship or an adult relationship, nobody is exempt from being exposed to it. Whether the victim themselves is the main exposure, the abuser is the main exposure, somebody who's witnessing it, a friend in the hallway, a teacher, a counselor, a parent, a loved one, anybody is victim of abuse in some way, shape, or form, whether they realize it or not. More than half of children, teenagers, and adolescents can fall victim to abuse. Typically, whenever you're looking at an abusive situation, because women are traditionally viewed as the weaker species, because we are the domesticated version, we are the one that's supposed to follow, the one that's supposed to take orders. Typically feminine and women, or feminine men and women, are the ones that are going to be more subject to the violence and abuse than more masculine men. And that's not to say that masculine men do not fall victim to it, because it can very much happen depending on the person themselves, the situation, and the abuser. Teens typically, whenever they're dating, will fall victim to an abusive situation with another teen, whether it's online or in the classroom, in the school, or, as also mentioned in here, a teen with an educator can also be in an abusive, violent situation. There are instances where teenagers are in romantic, intimate relationships with teachers, educators, counselors, administrative staff. Even though that is very much illegal, it does still happen, and educators, administrators, and the adults that are in the relationship with the teen are able to conduct a violent relationship towards the teenager because of the power that they hold over the teenager, due to position, age, situation, anything like that. Any sort of abuse and violence in a relationship, no matter the age, is going to cause a situation of trauma. with teenagers, you're looking at trauma from a younger age. This is also the same situation whenever you look at teenagers who are in like a family abusive situation. So a romantic situation with a teen dating creates a younger developed instance of a trauma. Instantaneously, you're going to come into social distancing from friends, social distancing from family, maybe change in behavior, change in emotional status. A lot of people would say, oh, well, they're going through a phase, or it's just part of growing up. But if you look deeper into the situation, these teenagers may be in a situation that's more on the violent and abusive side of things that's causing this sudden shift in behavior, and family and friends may look past it as they're just growing or they're just in a phase. However, if not handled properly and not discussed and talked to, it will develop into more long-term problems. And this is where you get into your future problems as an adult, because teens who have experienced a violent and abusive situation aren't going to be able to recognize future in life what another violent situation would be. They're at a higher risk for more risky behavior, more alcohol and drug abuse, because they're going to be trying to hide their pain from maybe post-traumatic stress disorder that's come from it. A lot of psychological disorders will come from it: depression, anxiety. Re-victimization is a really big problem with people who have experienced teen abuse, because they will have a higher chance of being involved in another violent and abusive relationship as an adult without the help and proper tools that they need to get out of that situation and to learn from that situation. One of the biggest things that teenagers need to learn that they can do is to talk to their surrounding people. So whether it's talking to a friend, talking to a sibling, talking to a parent, staff at the school, counselor, literally anybody that isn't in the middle of an abusive situation is a good person to talk to. People can report problems. Adults can help the problem. Parents most definitely can get involved and help separate the situation. Staff and admin at the schools can help and step in and separate the situation. Counselors, law enforcement, they can always step in as well, depending on the severity of the violence and abuse in the relationship. It's also possible for the community and for the staff, administration, friends, family to be able to prevent and create an awareness for abusive situations and relationships, because teens are still learning and they're not fully aware of the world and their surroundings. They very, very easily fall victim to situations like violence and abuse. So it's very important that the schools become involved, provide materials and information that's readily available to students and staff to be able to recognize abuse and violence in a relationship, understand how to get out of abusive situations in a relationship, teach teenagers that they don't necessarily have to stay in a relationship for social standards and social development. They are able to get out of something, create more of an awareness for the teens while they're learning at their level. Online, because they're so much into the digital world, online resources are also very vital. So that way teens are able to get online, maybe report something online to a help group, or have resources and help available online to help them out of it. Realistically, teen dating, violence, and abuse is an actual growing problem that people don't pay attention to, because a lot of times it's under the surface. But it can be prevented. It can be stopped if it's already started. It does have long-term effects if you don't treat it properly, as well as the short-term effects from it immediately. But nobody's immune to it, and there are a lot of different problems that can arise from it that people don't realize are actually abuse and violence.